So a pleasant morning to our participants from all over the Philippines. The same greeting goes to our resource person, Dr. Amelia Buwan, for always sharing her time to be with us. Right now, we are expecting a total of 100 science and mathematics teachers in the elementary to junior high school levels. Okay, so this webinar is being brought to you by the Science Teacher Academy for the regions of the Science Education Institute of DOST. And today's webinar, entitled Assessment in a Distance Learning Modality, is the eighth of a series of STAR webinars. We know that this topic is very timely and relevant considering that school will open in August 24 and distance learning platforms, either online or printed, are being readied by the Department of Education. The big question is, how do we assess learning in that medium? So this webinar will hopefully answer that question. We do hope you find this webinar meaningful and applicable to you as a teacher delivering instruction in this new normal environment. We invite your active participation because at the end of the session, we have some questions for you to answer. So at this point, may I request participants to turn off their microphone in the course of the presentation also, so we don't get distracted with unnecessary noise. You may just turn it on later if necessary for questions or in case there are points that need to be raised. You may also use the chat box for that purpose. Okay. So at this point, it is a great honor to introduce to you our resource person. Actually, she needs no introduction. Okay. And you may have known her already. And okay, so as I stated, our resource person is Dr. Amelia T. Buwan from Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology, or MSU IIT. She is a Doctor of Philosophy in Education, major in Research and Evaluation uh, at the University of the Philippines in Diliman. She's also a graduate of Master of Arts in Mathematics Education at MSU IIT in April 1997. And for her Bachelor's of Science in Education, major in Math, she had it at MSU IIT. Okay, so among her work experiences are the following. She is an Associate Professor of Technology currently at MSU IIT and also the Dean of MSU IIT College of Education. She has been a visiting professor at the Konkan University in Thailand in September 2019, and she has been a lecturer at the UP Open University from 2013 to 2017. She's also been a master teacher, katulad rin natin, katulad ninyo, at Iligan City East High School from 1994 to 2004. She has a number of accomplishments. I just indicated here a few. Okay, she has published vast number of scientific articles in peer-reviewed international journals from 2010 to 2019. She is able to produce printed and electronic instructional materials in science and mathematics education. She also served as plenary speaker, resource person, trainer in a number of local, regional, and international conferences and trainings. She also served as project coordinator for the project evaluation of DOST SCI STAR training program from August to December 2018. She has been the outstanding MSU IIT CED IDS alumni in 2019. And most of all, she is our beloved star trainer since 2014. Without much ado, it is a great pleasure and honor to have with us to introduce Dr. Amelia T. Buwan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so sorry for my background. It seems the sunshine is really enhancing my beauty right now. So I'm Black Beauty and I'm beautiful today. Okay, so hope everyone is doing fine. And kung saan man kayo ngayon, I know that you've been very busy on preparing our modules right now. Am I right? Okay. And as well as we are thinking about on how do we distribute our materials to our learners. Okay, so for today we will discuss what could be the possible assessment that we could implement in a distance learning modality. So hope everyone is fine, and I'm so thankful to all of you because I know all of us here are teachers and we're trying our best to be prepared on teaching our kids during this pandemic. So with that, I'd like to sing a song to all of you. I'm not a singer. Mom Cynthia, April, and LJ knows me that I don't sing. But I'm so inspired of what we are doing now, what teachers are doing right now, who attended webinars, collaborating with their peers, go to schools, talking to their administrators, and then thinking about on how to teach this school year. And I have four students in my home right now who are enrolled in DepEd. So kindergarten, grade 4, as well as two junior high school and one senior high school. And then my kindergarten student at home is very excited to meet their classmate, but sad to say, he cannot meet his classmate, but he had to stay at home and then learn the modules that the teachers delivered to them. So, my dear teachers, you are the sunshine of the kids right now. So, I hope you keep your energy, and then don't forget every morning, even though you are writing your module, you go out and then take that sunshine because it gives us happy hormones every day. So I hope everyone is inspired to wake up and then thinking about on how to teach with this type of pandemic. Okay, so let us sing this song. I know you know the tune of this song. Let's do this together, but it's only me that I can turn on my microphone. Okay, are we ready? You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Good. So I hope every teacher here, you are the sunshine of the students. Please do take care of yourselves, okay? So let's proceed. So for today, are you okay? Can you hear me, right? And you can see my presentation?
Yes, Ma'am Amy. It's
Okay, thank you. So for today, we will discuss on systems of approach on instructional design. That's the thing that I will discuss first. And then based on the 60 people who answered my survey yesterday, I reflect on your current assessment practice and I try to incorporate that one in my presentation. And let us discuss the assessment purpose and methods for distance learning. And I'm so thankful for 60 participants who really answered last night. And the inputs that we will discuss now are uh, the responses that you gave me last night. Okay, so this is the instructional design system. So as we design our lesson, or some of you maybe are waiting for the module from DepEd, but please don't forget that we've been teachers for a long time. And then we already have materials before that we could also utilize now. But what we could think is right now we need to assess our learners. Who are our learners right now and what are their contexts? Okay, we need to assess the needs of our learners for us to proceed on thinking about the essential learning activities that we could give now. Okay, so after that, if we know a learner, we know their context, and we assess their resources right now, we are thinking about the learning competencies that they have to achieve for this school year. So with that learning competency, we will do some task analysis of that learning competency. In what way could they develop the learning competencies? So we will write performance objectives, and then the backward curriculum design. After your learning objective, you have to think ahead of your assessment instrument. Because if it is very clear on what will student achieve, then we could now write our instructional process where assessment could be embedded in the instructional process. Okay, so with that, remember that we are in school, or maybe you are teaching from your home, and then students are also in their home. So we need to reach out to them, because uh, it's not the same before that all students are in our classroom. So I'd like to present to you on how do we design our activities right now, and how do we assess the modules or the competency that students you would like them to achieve. So we will use the acronym REACH. So R stands for we must think about relevant learning outcomes. So what what do I want my students to be like at the end of the academic year? So since we are in a new normal and we are not very sure if we could go back to the old normal, okay? So even maybe if we have the vaccine, there will be changes on how do we conduct our classes. So, and then we want our students to be prepared if pandemic will happen, or there will be disruption of classes. So what essential knowledge and skills will learners develop for this academic year or beyond? What do you want your students to learn at the end of the school year? So in all the curriculum, science, math, Araling Palipunan, or English, if you try to look at it, we want our students to be critical thinker. Even this pandemic, we want to develop their thinking skills, communication skills, creativity, and still we want them to collaborate. There's a teacher that says, before, I really love my classroom. When I start my lesson, students work together to a problem. So how would I do this now? Will who are the student? Who will be their peers in working with their module or working with their activity? So right now we want to develop these four C's, but students are more self-directed. So therefore, in what way could our strategies in such a way that students develop that self-direction? So that will be very challenging, especially for kindergarten, grade school, as well as the junior high school. But I guess based on your responses on the survey that I have done last night, you are thinking about what relevant content do you want to teach now? What context might be appropriate or possible for your students? And when and how would students apply this content? Okay, so writing your performance objective, we must be very mindful on what do I want my students to learn. Okay, and then if if you are very clear on what you want your students to learn, I hope your assessment is aligned on attaining that learning objective. How will I know if they have learned, or there's a change in them? So what assessment tool will I develop? Okay, and then if you have decided this assessment tool, how do you embed on your instructional strategy in this new normal. Okay, so for right now, we are very busy on thinking about the learning materials that students use. Okay, so maybe students were going to read your module or your prepared video in the USB, or some students will have online. Then they could use their maybe Google Classroom or Facebook. So those material and the activities that we are doing are formal learning. But it is also very important that we want students to be connected, social learning. And that connection maybe could be their classmate and their neighbors. So therefore, we need to know who are their neighbors or who are their parents or brothers and sisters that could help them on their activity. And what activity at home or in school or in the community that they will be able to apply the learning objective that we want them to learn. Okay, so with that context, so therefore we need to develop an engaging and authentic learning task. So in this new normal, we really need to think about authentic learning, where learners are engaged in a task that provides opportunities for them to collaborate, to ask their parents. So right now, I want to ask all of you, you may turn on your camera, but turn off your microphone. I want you to draw a flower, okay? So your activity is, I want you to draw a flower in your table right now. And then present your flower using your, put that in the camera of your computer, okay? Very quickly, draw a flower at the count of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Please show me your flowers on your screen. Oh, good. Okay, great. Okay, so see, very quickly, everyone has a different type of flowers. Okay, but generally, great. Thank you for your flowers. Okay, some draw it using their tablet. Okay, so you see from this activity, you have different way of presenting your task. Others you do the digital way. Others are doing it with your paper and your pencil. So generally, most of your flowers look this way, right? And if you try to search on the internet and then search for flower and then you go to images, you could really find this type of flower. But if you go outside of your home right now, you could see different type of flowers, right? So it's very important that we need to connect the where our learners right now, in what community or what context, and then connect the learning task, the authentic learning task, to their home or on their learning community. So some maybe I haven't seen your drawing. Some maybe sketch a different type of flower. Maybe it's a rose if they have more time to do it. Okay, so teams right now are thinking about authentic learning tasks. So to assess your learning objective in this new normal, we need really to design an authentic learning activity for our students that align to their context as well as their resources right now. And the good thing about right now, the opportunity of this pandemic, they can access to experts. Either you have a friend that you want your student to present using Google Meet or using Zoom or using other webinar tools, then you could just invite expert, and then this expert, many of them will not charge you a maybe a fee. So in this pandemic, take the opportunity to invite expert to your class, and then have your student experience not only you as expert but other expert. But this expert could be also their parents, or this expert could be the barangay captain. So right now, we must design authentic learning activity in such a way that students will have varied information from varied experts. Okay, since we design an authentic learning, so therefore, you need to design also an authentic assessment. As you have presented this morning, you have multiple ways of presenting your output. Some in paper and pencil, and some are using their tablet. Okay, so that's the way that's the new normal right now. So we need to think about, so if it's very clear for you, your learning competency, what learning competency or objective your students will develop, and then what assessment tool will I make, then what specific tasks will my student accomplish. Okay, and then uh, what are the resources that you could have access at home or in the community. So this is an example of an authentic task where students were going to make a budget with their parents. Their parents are the expert on how to spend money during this crisis. Actually, right now, we may want to teach our student to be sensitive on the situation of their family. It's very difficult right now. Some parents don't have job, or maybe if they work online, or for in this case, many have no jobs and maybe they really need to work with their budget. Okay, so maybe that's one of the skill that we want our student to learn for this academic year. And you may design an authentic learning activity that will help them develop that skill. Uh, those socio-emotional skill, not only the content. Okay, so always remember, as you design or think about that learning task, you will still target this 4 C's. Even during pandemic, you will still want to develop this 4 important skills. Okay, so relevant content, relevant task, and then it must be an engaging learning task, engaging, authentic activity. So right now, the materials also is very important that it is engaging. So right now you have your learning module and you have resources at home. We need to think about that in this time, in this new normal, the immediate feedback is very important. Okay, so if we give students with one module that they will work for that in 1 week, then if the parents will deliver that to you, we really need to think about how to give immediate feedback. If you have experienced, my dear teachers, before when we are in the old normal, when we give tests, for example, this week, and then since we have a lot of activities in school, we haven't checked the work of our students. So maybe after 3 weeks or after 2 weeks, we already proceed to the next lesson. We haven't returned the paper. And then since we already have time to check it and return to our students, they have seen their scores, and they are so happy with 40 over 50 or 47 over 50, or they're so sad with their 8 over 50. The feedback is just the score, but how could they recover on the items that they get wrong? Okay, or how could they work more so that they will understand the correct concept? But if we give directly the feedback, that it is not, we will not focus more on the score, but they are thinking about why I get wrong with item number 10. What should be the answer? But if you give the feedback later, then they don't bother which item that they need to work more and which item that they have it correct. Okay, so therefore, right now we need to think about how do I manage my assessment in such a way that I could give immediate feedback to that student. Okay, in this way, students will be engaged. And then, since you give feedback, you give now the next module. Okay, so that giving immediate feedback right now is very challenging. And then let's try to learn on how you respond to my survey. I will try to discuss on how to give immediate feedback to your students. Okay, so to give immediate feedback, one strategy is to think about an achievable task. Achievable task for you as a teacher as well as the learners. Okay, we need to think about for you as a teacher. For example, for first grading period, how many output will my students need to submit? And then you need to ask the question, do I have time to check all this output? What will be my strategy so that I could give immediate feedback to my student? Okay, think about that achievable task. So as a teacher, you need to think about what are the tasks that you give to your students, what resources that you have right now, and what is your goal for your student. And think about those achievable tasks. At the same time, you also need to think about your learners. What tasks do you intend them to do for the first grading period? And what resources do they have at home? And your goal on how to meet the learning competency. And you have to decide which task that they could be successful. Because if they are successful in that task, they will be engaged. Okay? And they may proceed to other learning materials. And remember, we will going to involve our parents right now, our family members. Okay? So in what way that these family members could help them in doing the task. Okay? So one strategy of doing that is thinking about that we have math, English, science, TLE, MAPE, AP, AST, and Filipino. Uh, One strategy that I would suggest is maybe because classes will start by August, maybe your school already think about for the team of one grade level, maybe, for example, grade 1 or no, grade 3, they have this subject. Okay, so I hope for the grade level teachers already talk about an important authentic learning task that they have to work on, where maybe a project on family budget, and then where an English teacher would work, try to look at the family budget, a math teacher, or maybe a AP or TLE teacher will work on the family budget. Okay? So in that way, if teachers work together, and then maybe you have how many grade students, you have a way on how to assess the work of your students and you could give immediate feedback. Okay? So it's really time now to work together. Remember, this is a very challenging task and it's good to work with a team. Okay, so how do we assess right now? If you give authentic tasks, then we will do authentic assessment. Okay, so for example, many of you really express that you will do some recorded video, or some of you have saved the video on YouTube. So if you are a math teacher, try to visit this link. And then if you're a science teacher, try to visit this link. So I'll try to share on the chat box so that you could see the link. Wait. Can you type, or can you type the link now in your computer? And then try to look at the video and then think about what guide question would you give for your student for them to be focused on uh, when watching the video. So so before we also do this when we are in the classroom. We let them watch a video and then you have guide questions. So it's the same thing. But right now, uh, they will do it by themselves. Okay, I'm lost with the chat. Wait, okay, here. Anyone? So have you tried to look at the video? I'll give you 5 minutes on doing that. Or and then you try to share in the chat box what guide questions do you want to give to your students when watching this video. Okay, so I'll give you time to work on it. So are you okay? Are you watching the video now? Please let me know in the chat box if you are doing it now. Okay, good. And then I want you to type in the chat box, what guide question do you give to your students when watching the video? Just share it in the chat box. Okay, great. For those who have done watching, you may want to share what guide question would you give to your students in watching the video? Okay, everyone, please share your question. Okay. Okay, so these two video actually are for math teachers. These are activity that they could do at home. As you could see on the first video, for those who are watching math, uh, they're learning about sets actually as well as shapes. And these are uh, authentic activity, one simple learning activity that students can do at home. And for science teachers, as you could see, it's a very exciting one, discussing about what happened, some molecules, right? What happened to the tea bag, why it's a rocket tea bag, okay? And it explains a science concept, okay? So actually right now, every teacher is challenged on how could you develop a learning activity at home and they will learn a deep concept and relate this concept in real life. So as they watch the video, I hope we could also think about good questions that you are now typing in the chat box in guiding students in watching the video. I hope these good questions will help the students to develop those self-direction skills. Okay? By the way, can you see my screen? Yes? Oh, it's the banana pala. I thought I have the tea racket. Okay, so that two activities actually are very engaging activity at home, but it is very important that we need to ask good question for them to synthesize what they have learned in the video. So I hope later I will try to look at your questions. Okay, I'd like to proceed. So therefore, it's very important that we need to embed assessment in everything that we do. Like if you create your module, if you create your video, in what way could we be sure that students are learning something on the materials that we give to them? So for us to do that, we need to have a very clear assessment purpose. So again, you have a relevant content, you have a relevant task, an engaging task. Now we need to think about clear assessment purpose. So I guess everyone already done with survey on their learners profile. That's why many of you, many of the schools right now are thinking about asking donation that their students would access even with a call and text phone. Okay, so we know our students right now, what are their resources, who are their parents, and in what way could we make our activity engaging to this type of learners. We need to think about encouraging collaboration and self-direction. So in your responses kanina, kagabi, I've read that most of you are thinking about that you will do you need to call your students or send SMS tasks. This one is a strategy in such a way that you will know if your students are still engaged with your material. Okay? And then some also express that you will do some Facebook chat messaging. And then one teacher also replied that since your students don't have uh, internet connection and don't have technology tools, so you will do home visitation. So it's okay to do home visitation, but we must follow all those health standards that our community have advised to us. Okay? So some faculty, I really salute to all the teachers right now because they are really thinking about home visitation. Some teachers are thinking about, when I've done an interview with DepEd teacher here in Iligan, they are thinking about clustering their learners and they will do some learning station and have their kids go to that learning station in that community, maybe 3 kids, following the community protocol. And then they will do some learning station mentoring. So it is very important that in this strategy, you can provide feedback right away. And you could also use that in monitoring progress. And in checking understanding, you need to think about how do you use self-reflection in such a way that you will know that your students are still engaged. Learning labs, if you want to involve your parents, their parents' assessment, as well as providing feedback to your students. So as you can see, in all the assessment purpose, the most important thing right now is how to provide immediate feedback on in their output. Many of you teachers also expressed that you will do e-assessment, online quizzes, as well as portfolio. For those who have no internet, you will do printed portfolio submission. Okay? So I hope that we must have a very clear assessment purpose in such a way that we gauge student needs, we encourage self-direction, monitor their progress, checking their understanding, as well as, this is the summative part, demonstrating understanding. Okay? So you must be very clear. Remember the instructional design system. We must be very clear on the outcome. What do you want your student to be like at the end of the school year? And in what way, how will I know that they have changed? So what type of assessment will I employ in my instructional strategy? So if I do formative assessment, what are the outputs of our student? And for example, for first grading period, before we distribute our portfolio, you must have decided now what are the outputs that students should submit in this first grading period. If it is three output, you must be very clear what are these three outputs. Because since you already decided, not like before when we are face to face, sometimes, gusto kong mag-quiz ngayon para ma-check ko kung sinong late at sinong hindi late, or sinong absent at hindi absent. We cannot do it now, okay? So what we will do is, before you deliver the materials to your student, you must be very sure what are the essential output that students should do. And this essential output really reflect your, your goal, your outcome, okay? And then if this is the output one, and in what way could you support your learners so that they will be successful in this output? Do you do some video, recorded video, or video from YouTube, or audio recording? Or do you do some worksheets? For those who have online connectivity, you could do some manage on synchronous and asynchronous activity. Okay? For output two, how would you, what materials would help them, and what are the tasks in this material? So as you could see, in all the things that we do, assessment is embedded in all the instructional process. Okay? So right now, we must be very sure as a teacher, what assessment will I give to my students that I can manage to give feedback? Okay? So do not overwhelm yourself. Do not overwhelm your learners. Okay? So that teacher and students could have, at the end of this pandemic, everyone is healthy and everyone are learning new skills. The teacher will learn new skill based on the feedback of your student on how to teach during this pandemic. Students will also learn how to be more self-directed. Okay? So as you give those output, that output could be a performance-based task. And what is very important here, the task must be very clear to your student, and the checklist and rubric should be already part of distributing it to your students. So right now, your students or your learners could do self-assessment because the task is well-defined and it is also well-defined on how they will be graded. Okay? So remember that you may want your student for a one grading period, three outputs. And these three outputs can be put in a portfolio. So a portfolio assessment is a purposeful collection of students' work that students' effort, progress, and achievement. It may be they're learning in maybe in MAPE or in ESP or maybe in science. They are working in one portfolio, and to make it doable for teachers, these three teachers could work together in evaluating the portfolio of their students. So if you are in one grade level, you may talk and then think about on how do you assess the portfolio of your student in such a way that you will know who needs help and who among the students can proceed to the next topic. Remember, it's not only the content that we will teach now, but as well as those essential skills. And that essential skill for teachers right now is working together so that you will not be overwhelmed on giving immediate feedback to your students. Okay? So portfolio assessment represents student best work, or maybe it's a growth of your students. So for exhibiting their best work, we call that one as showcase portfolio. A portfolio that contain drafts of student and teachers used to reflect on the process. For example, you want your student to develop problem-solving skill. So you may want your student that please do not throw your scratch paper. You may put that in your portfolio so that you could check in how many trial did students work on that problem before they get the correct answer. As well as there's also what we call progress portfolio, contain multiple examples of the same type of work done over time and are used to assess the progress. Okay? So therefore, for the portfolio assessment right now, teachers could assess it because there's already a prepared rubric and checklist. Parents and peers could assess it, assess their portfolio, as well as they must do self-assessment. So assessment right now is very clear and uh, where students and teachers and parents will talk about it. So therefore, there's a question on in what way would I know that the student is really working on this, not the parents, okay? So if you do some triangulation, if you ask your student to self-assess, and then your parents will also assess it and peers, and as well as the teacher, then you will know if students really worked on that task, okay? Or maybe you have to vary your assessment. You may want to quiz, right? You may want to give performance test, as well as you may want to give a summative test. So you may triangulate the result of this type of test. Okay? So therefore, collaborative feedback is very important, where teachers, parents, and learners will work together. You could do that if you have clear assessment tool. Okay? So, so for these days, feedback is very important. So be specific as possible with your feedback. And the sooner the better. So therefore, feedback is very important. So make sure we could manage it. And then involve learners in giving the feedback. So how to give specific feedback? For example, if you have this tool, let's talk about the budget. So maybe if the learner, we want to make sure if they're doing it, a learner would maybe that my family budget is 10,000. And since you know their uh, family status or societal status, so you would say, is this realistic? So giving feedback to learners is also very important. So we must find a way on how to say our feedback. We may say, do you want to review your feedback and ask your parents on their monthly income? Do you want to go back to your parents and ask them? So you would know if giving specific feedback if you have clear assessment tool. Okay, in this way you support your learners how to be successful in their learning task. Okay, so the value of doing self-assessment is students know what will be the standard. So right now it will be more of self-assessing, involve the parents or the peers at home, and then submit it to you. And then in school, you also work together as a team. Okay? So self-assessment helps students internalize the standard by which their product and performance will be judged. Okay? So how will I do now? So since my students, you have different type of students. Maybe you have student A, B, and C, or a group of students who belong to category a group of students who belong to category B, or a group of students belong to category C. So will I give different tasks to these types of students? Based on your responses, I've read 5 of you says that I may give different tasks to different type of students depending on the access of the internet. That is also correct. No, there will be right now when we teach these days. There's no right or wrong, I guess, because as a teacher, we're trying our best on how to connect with our students. Okay, but some of you answered that I may have one assessment task and one assessment tools, but I will give different scaffolding for them to be successful in the assessment task. That's why I put different colors. These different colors are different scaffold on different type of students. And our purpose of this is to make students successful on that assessment task. Okay? So, and then it is very important also, like the activity this morning when I asked you to draw a flower. If before the old normal, when we let them submit an output, submit a presentation on the sharing to us the budget of your family for this month. So for right now, we must be very flexible. Maybe your students don't have an access to computer. You may want them to submit maybe a notebook showing their presentation, or you may want to have a picture or a drawing, or maybe a recorded video, depending on the resources that they have at home. Okay? So what is very important right now, in what way could be very sensible in giving support to our students. Okay? And our assessment output may vary depending on the resources of our students. So always remember that we must have a clear assessment purpose. Okay? So that this assessment reflect the learning goal, provide flexible opportunities for students to submit their assessment output, and we must provide scaffold and support for students to be successful, and it must be done in an ongoing manner. Okay? Lastly, remember, rich, relevant, engaging, achievable tasks, and achievable assessment tools that we will give to our student, clear assessment purpose for this time, and make sure it is holistic. So before, maybe at the same time, the same thing when we do face-to-face classes, we use diverse teaching strategies. So it's also the same now. We need to use varied teaching strategies to get students be involved. At the same time, diverse assessment strategies to our students. So if you do some quiz, it would also help if you use diverse teaching assessment strategies, because you may triangulate the result of those varied assessment tools. Okay? And then remember the thing that I shared a while ago, one output or one assessment output may not be possible for other students. So we need to tailor our assessment tool, our lesson, to the learner's interests as well as the resources of the learners. So we must very mindful that one lesson doesn't fit all. So therefore, we need to tailor our activity depending on the needs of our student. And remember, we must have that gender lens in writing our material as well as our activity. We must make sure as a teacher that we pay attention to both boys and girls in such a way the learning activity that we decided, it developed their skills for both boys and girls, and they manage learning tasks and encourage them to get involved in this remote learning creatively. And then the good thing about home visitation strategy in this time of pandemic, or making a call to your learners, is we may know who are still engaged and not engaged. Be very mindful on the early signs of withdrawing to your class, or they have depression because they are not successful of the task that they are doing right now. lack of hope and desire to leave school, and we may have to think about how to figure out on how to keep all the students engaged in all the tasks. Okay, so always remember that assessment must be embedded in all the instruction, and it must be first taught. After the learning competency, think about an assessment tool. Okay, so we need to have a relevant outcome, engaging, authentic learning activity, and it should be achievable to you as teachers as well as to your learners. Clear assessment purpose, and it must be very clear to the teacher, to students, as well as to the parents, and it must be holistic. Okay? Remember, it's our first time to be on this one. We must work together, and then maybe in one of your session, we will celebrate the new pedagogies that we've learned in this pandemic. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Ma'am Amy, for that very insightful, very informative presentation. Okay, so at this point, we open the floor for questions or comments. Uh, you may want to, you can turn on your microphone if you need to talk, or you may just write down on the chat box your questions if there are. So, okay, who will shoot the first question? Ano ba mga ano din? Let's check, ma'am, from the chat box. Okay, so these are just comments. Very
Yes,
informative. Thank you.
collaboration is the key.
Is the key. Okay, there's one question.
If
Yeah.
there's
About
question.
summative tests.
Yeah. If summative tests are done online, how do we ensure its reliability? Um, yes, this is a question also that I read in the survey. How do we make sure the reliability of the test online? We must have a varied type of assessment, not only the quiz. You may want your students to have maybe learning labs and reflection. Do triangulation on your test. So one suggestion, if your students have internet connectivity, you may want to use time online assessment. Like, for example, we will have our summative test tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and we will only do it for 30 minutes. So first thing that you will do is, if let us think the ideal thing that all of your students have internet. Maybe you will first check the attendance in Zoom or in Google Meet. And then now let's start the test. You will open now your online assessment. Okay? And then after that, you will also check, or they will submit the output, and then you will also check if they're still on the Zoom or on the Meet. Okay? So you could do that if you want to make sure. But if not all of your students are online, you may want to triangulate it with their learning lags, as well as maybe in engaging authentic tasks. Okay. Yeah. How can we validate the reliability of our assessment tools that we cannot see our students? It happens. Actually, I have experience before in Open OU. It's really fully online activity, and I detect that two students are copying the same work. Okay. It's because I let them, we have an online quiz, but they have also a paper, they have to submit a paper. And I've realized when I check their work, it's almost the same. So therefore, you will really know if you check the output that they have submitted, and then you have a variety type of assessment. Okay. So right now for teachers, it's just a question because we haven't tried yet this flexible learning teaching where you are in school and your students are at home. You will realize or you will have your own strategy on thinking about that if your students are submitting their work or their parents are doing it. You will have a way on how to do it. Is there any way to ensure the reliability of answers to students like formulating a rubric exclusive for online or modular assessment? Is there any way to ensure that okay, reliability for their work. Actually, if you work together with your students, where you will do self-assessment and you will also do assessment with the same rubric, or maybe if you work with another teacher and they will also assess the work of that the same output, then you could compare the ratings, the self-assessment, your assessment, as well as your co-teacher's assessment. Okay. So right now, I guess it is very difficult. Uh, we need to think about working together with our peers. Is there a way in which students, you can identify the essay output of the student is 100% authentic or not? Hmm. Okay. For example, because some students will copy in the internet, right? There's a lot of tool to check if they have copied all the paragraph. One free tool, or maybe for limited number of paragraph, is Grammarly, and other tools that you could use. Okay. Is it fair, or are you in favor in parents helping our child in answering the summative test, since we are administering summative tests online? You cannot stop, right? You cannot stop your students. So if they are at home, maybe parents would really help them in their summative test. But if you have, maybe we will still do the homeroom parents teachers meeting. No, tell the parents about the value of assessment. So you tell them that we are working with you, that your students will learn this concept. So you may help them in their project, but in the summative test, please let your student answer the test so that we will also help which of the concepts that they need more support. Okay, so we need to explain to our teachers the value of assessing, that this is not only for grade, but we are teaching now, even it's pandemic, because we still want their student to be competitive to other students, and we want them help. We will help them to learn this important concept. And I guess the most important thing, the one that I've done before in my classroom, offline pa yon, face to face, I've really asked my parents to help their kids develop this following skill: self direction. Remember, parents, in the future, we will not be there with them. So right now, as early as now, we will help them to be independent. So there are times that you will help them in maybe preparing the materials that in doing the activity, but in this task, please ask them to work on their own. Okay, maybe. So some parents may understand, some parents may not. But we must explain to our parents that this is our responsibility. Okay? Can teachers give projects that require students to devise and use their own procedure instead of teacher-made procedure? Yes, definitely, Ray. Uh, Here, Ray, as what I have mentioned a while ago, uh, we must be very sensitive on what are the resources of our students right now. Our assessment task will also be very sensitive on the resources of our student as well as their access to the internet. Assessment may or may not be fit to all your students. So maybe some of your students are ready to design their own procedure, but some of your students may need a guide question. So I guess we know our student well. You may differentiate your instruction, Ray, on requiring project to your student. What is very important now, Ray, we want our student to be successful from first grading to the fourth grading period. So therefore, we want to differentiate our instruction. I'm not so sure if the the grading system, the numerical grading system, will still be valuable to our students right now. But since DepEd will still do that, then let us just follow the policy. But we as teachers, we value our student for them to be successful for this school year. So we may want to vary depending on the type of the learners on the project that we will give to them. What's very important, we help them to be successful in the task that we are giving. Okay, I hope that helps, Ray, and thank you for that question. Kindly give us example po of triangulation of assessment. So, for example, the lesson in mathematics, because I'm a mathematics teacher, the lesson will be on measurement. So there's a quiz on measurement, like finding the area. There's a paper and pencil test with that. And it may vary. There are students who have access to online, then you may give it online. But there are students who cannot access to online, so distribute the paper-based summative test. Okay? Another summative activity would be you may want them to decide maybe a room in their house and try to measure the perimeter. Okay? So if they got it right in the test online or in the paper and pencil test, they should get also the correct answer when they want to measure the perimeter in an authentic, engaging learning activity that they could do at home. That's the second activity. And then another activity could be you may want them to write uh, maybe write a problem in mathematics involving measurements. Okay, so it just takes time to design this output 1, output 2, output 3, but you may triangulate if the 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 result of your assessment really will tell if the students are really doing the test or doing the authentic activity. Okay, I hope that helps, Luigi. And then another one, what assessment practices have you used online that have been particularly effective in the current setup? Um, Depending, for me, because we are in college right now, I guess it's very easy for us, for our type of learners. We will give paper where students write a paper and submit it to us, and then we do some chunking of their work, and then they do peer assessment. Another thing for basic education, I'm not so sure if the pure online would help for them right now if you are a face-to-face school before. So you need to think about a blended assessment practice, okay? So online as well as maybe offline activity that will give them more engaged in your class. Remember, our main goal actually is to keep students engaged throughout the school year. Another thing, how can we motivate our students for modular distance learning? How we will know who are the top performing students if we are not sure that they are answering their modules on their own? Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess, yun. So if you have varied type assessment, and then you will give immediate feedback, and then you will know who are good students and who are average students. Like what we are doing here, actually there's a huge gap on our practice and in basic ed practice. We would really know who got flat 1, 1.25, and 1.75, depending on the answer. Karen, this question is a very good question, and maybe someday we'll have good answers to this, depending on your context. Okay, how we will know that who are the top performing students? If it is online, actually, you may want to have other activities like you want them to have a Zoom meeting or Google Meet meeting and then ask them question, interview them, and then you will really know who are the witty students. If you really want to grade them and then have them top 1, 2, and 3. But I wish, meron lang akong wish, I hope uh, hindi sana ganyan tayo rate with our students right now. But I guess every school in the Philippines still, we are still on who are the top performing students. Okay, so Karen, I cannot really advise specific advice for you right now, but I guess as we practice this remote teaching, you will know who are really your top performing students, because per practice, we would really know who are working or who are not working, and some are delayed in submitting their output. Okay. Another one, teachers must be able to identify student interest and the availability of resources applicable to them to develop a preparation strategy. Okay, thank you for that, Linden. That's a comment. Okay, other concerns? Uh, yeah, Julie, sorry for that. Wala yung sound dyan.
I think most all of the questions or concerns have been addressed. There are no more comments or questions coming in at this point. So, okay, so thank you very much, Ma'am Amy, and thank you for addressing the concerns and questions of all the participants.
Meron na ba ganun strategy na ngayon?
Let's hear from them. So you may write down your answers. Wala yung iba. How about the others? Okay, so none actually.
Do you think that it is it's a relevant activity that we may want to think about right now? Because or else you may overwhelm yourself with a lot of assessment in every subject area. Okay? You will give for one grade level or one section of students maybe, so that your students will not be overwhelmed, as well as you will not be overwhelmed also. Because this is our first time to be on this situation. Kailangan talagang mag-usap tayo and then let's work this together. And then there's no best strategy right now, but we will explore and maybe someday, Ma'am Stint, if we will have online sharing of best practice on teaching in this remote learning activity. Yes.
Ayan.
Okay.
That's a nice idea, Ma'am Amy. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for your participation and looking forward to your participation in our future webinars. And we're almost done with July and we're entering August. And in a few days, school will open. So good luck to all of us. Stay safe always.